To make Mongolian beef and garlic rice, just follow these directions as well as the ones written on your paper. Okay, so you'll start with flank steak. Each group will get 3/4 of a pound. You can see on this, we talked about it in Culinary Essentials as well, that you want to cut against the grain, and that will give you the most tender cut you can get. So the grain on this steak is going this way, or it's going this way. So you can see that I'm slicing across that grain so that it will be less chewy. You also want to cut in very thin strips. So I took my flank steak, which would have gone from there to there. I cut it first this way, and then I had smaller pieces that I could cut into very thin strips. This is what my finished pile of cut flank steak looks like. You'll notice that there is some marbling, not a ton like a ribeye, but it's a great cut for this cooking method. Then it goes into my marinade. My marinade includes soy sauce, garlic powder, and red pepper flakes. I'm going to marinate it for at least 15 minutes, up to 2 hours. But remember, if you marinate in soy sauce for a long time, it will make the outside break down too much and it will get mushy on the outside. So 15 minutes is just perfect for our class period. While someone is cutting the meat, you'll also be working on starting the rice. So to give some more flavor to the rice, we're going to first melt some butter, and then I'm going to, in the butter, I'm going to add some garlic. And remember, garlic burns quickly, and once it's burnt, it's bitter, and you have to start all over again, including washing your pan. So you're going to add some garlic, and you want that garlic to start toasting a little bit. This picture shows the butter. You can see is not quite just the color of butter, it's a little bit golden, and that's what we're looking for, and that's exactly what we're looking for in the garlic as well. So after that's been done, then we're going to add the rice. I stir that around and let it toast just a touch so that there's a little bit of aroma coming out of it, and it's a little bit golden brown. And then you're going to add your stock, so it's really going to sizzle for a minute. Give that a good stir, bring it up to a boil, then reduce it to a simmer. Leave that lid on there and resist the urge to open the lid over and over again. You're just going to add to the cooking time. You're going to simmer it for starting with 20 minutes, and then you can lift the lid, see if it's almost absorbed. If it's just about absorbed, take it off the heat, leave the lid on, and let it stand for 5 minutes. I'll show you what that looks like here in just a minute. Okay, so while someone is getting the rice going, I'm also going to be working on my sauce for my Mongolian beef. So this is a piece of fresh ginger. Hopefully you've had a chance to try this at some point this semester so far. If you've never tried it before, it's spicy and cool at the same time. It'll really clear out your sinuses. So it looks like a piece of coral in the grocery store, softer coral of course, and I'm going to just break off a little piece, and then you could use a vegetable peeler or a paring knife, and you're going to peel off that outside skin. Then I'm just going to use a microplane to grate this, or you can use a knife and you can just mince it since you're already mincing some garlic. So I'm going to mince that garlic and ginger next because those are going into my sauce that I need next. So in my saucepan, my saute pan, I've got 1 tablespoon of oil, medium heat, add the garlic and ginger, and you'll really start to smell that. It'll smell really good. Garlic and ginger together, and I don't want to burn those because remember, you'll have to start all over again. It'll take about 2 minutes to get them little lightly golden brown. Then I'm going to add the brown sugar, soy sauce, and water. Make sure you're using low sodium soy sauce because you're going to reduce this sauce, and if you reduce something that's really salty, you're just going to have a salt lick in the end. So you guys typically like salt a lot more than I do, but you'll still, trust me on this one, not want so much. If you're trying to watch health sugar intake, then you could reduce the brown sugar. When I make this at home, I use about 2 tablespoons of brown sugar instead of 3/4 of a cup. At school, students tend to prefer the 3/4 of a cup, but we tend to prefer at my house just the 2 tablespoons. Adds just enough amount of sweetness. So your group can use less if you'd like. So I'm going to bring that sauce to a simmer. And this is what it looks like. Remember, simmer is going to have those small bubbles on the top. If you boil it, and you boil it for too long, you're going to make a really odd soy sauce brown sugar candy, and that's not going to work for your sauce later. So make sure that you're just simmering it about 2 minutes. You're going to dump that off into a bowl. Make sure that it's a metal bowl. If you dump it in plastic, of course, the bowl will melt. Next, I'm going to put the steak pieces in the cornstarch. I just put the cornstarch in a bag. You could use a bowl and just mix it with your hands. I put them in a bag and just really shook it up really well. And you want a thin dusting all over the beef. Next, I heated up some oil in my same pan, so I didn't need to use another one. There's already enough steps going on in this recipe. So I heated up some oil, I put the steak in, and I brown it on both sides. You'll notice in the bottom of the pan, it's going to leave some of that breading. That's a good thing. Don't stop and wash out your pan. When groups have done this in the past, they can't get their sauce to thicken later. Because if you think about it, what's on the bottom of that pan? Some of that cornstarch. So you're creating a fond, which is the flavor on the bottom, and you're going to deglaze it later. And all this yummy stuff, even if you think it looks a little burnt, will be just fine in your sauce. So just watch your temperature, try not to burn it, and stuff is going to stick to the bottom, and that is okay. All right? If you need to do it in 2 batches, do it in 2 batches if there's just not enough space, and then you'll remove it to a paper towel lined plate. It will not be done all the way. It'll just be brown. Meanwhile, Simone is going to julienne carrots. You'll remember that we took this carrot, we cut it into sections, and then we squared it off, which means we're just cutting off the edges, and that's what I have down here to give myself a square. I do want to leave one side, so on this carrot I would leave this side right here because that's going to be my handle. And then I cut it into thin strips, and then I turn those on their side, and I get a julienne out of it. This cut is just right for the amount of time you're going to cook it and for your cooking method, and so you don't have huge chunks of carrots in there. This is what my rice looks like. So the liquid is mostly absorbed. So that was about 22 minutes, I believe. So I'm going to take that off the heat, leave the lid on. I'm going to leave it for 5 minutes. At the end, I'm just going to fluff it up with a fork. And then if your beef isn't quite ready yet, just set it to the side with the lid on, and your beef sauce will be so hot that you won't have to worry about reheating your rice. Just don't scorch your rice, because a scorched rice pan is one of the worst things to have to clean. It should be some sort of punishment, I believe. So next up, I am back to the beef recipe. So I returned the sauce to the pan along with the carrots and the beef. I let simmer for several minutes until thickened. So far I just have the sauce and the carrots in there. I'm going to get all that beef off that paper towel lined plate. It's going to go in, and I'm going to simmer. Remember those small bubbles. You want it to thicken up, so that cornstarch that was stuck to the bottom of your pan earlier is going to be what helps this thicken up. So remember, don't stop and clean that pan. Keep using the same pan. I'm going to just simmer it until it's thickened up, and it'll look like a familiar sauce, I think, to you. It'll be kind of a thick brown sauce. And then I want these green onions over here. I'm going to mix in half of them. I'm going to use half of them as garnish, and that is what that beef looked like after we cook it. And then it goes back in, and this is your final product here. I didn't show a plated product, but you can see that it's simmering here, and this really does thicken up a lot. So you can try it and you can adjust it, and it's ready to serve. If you like things a little spicier, then you're going to want to add more pepper flakes to your marinade in the beginning. I wouldn't just try to add them at the end unless you want just a little bit of sriracha on top of your serving only and the people in your group don't want them. Or I'd add it to the rice. You just want to build flavor instead of dumping all the flavor in right at the end. So this gets served over rice. It gets topped with green onions. If you were making this at home and you like different vegetables, you could even use one of those frozen bags of stir-fry vegetables. You could toss those in there. You could use some edamame. You could use whatever vegetables you like. I happen to love this with broccoli, and I think the broccoli is really, really good with the sauce. So you could add in a bunch of different vegetables. Like I said, you could reduce the brown sugar to about 2 tablespoons, and you could certainly serve this over cauliflower rice if you prefer. You could use arrowroot instead of the cornstarch if that is something that is important to you to change, maybe a paleo diet or something like that. So there's lots of ways to change this up, and I hope that you'll like it enough that you want to make it at home. That's the end. Enjoy your Mongolian beef and garlic rice.